What is going on, soccer card fiends? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. And today I want to talk about if we are close to the end of the backlog, if the higher end of soccer is sort of mellowing out. Now, it's not necessarily, I'm not going to talk about your $10,000, $100,000 cards because that's not where most of us play, and most of those cards are probably figured out at this point. But wanted to talk about more of the commons man type of cards that I've been paying attention to. I've set up a spreadsheet. I've gone through the last month of population change over the last 30 days or so. And I'll be doing this a lot going into the future, sort of tracking and seeing how this is all evolving. This is obviously very important in regards to PSA because, a lot of us have sort of wondered, and this is where a lot of the market just doesn't really know what to do. We had the boom, now we've had sort of the mellowing out. Next year going into the World Cup, we'll probably see a run-up in soccer card prices. How much of a run-up? Very debatable, and I'm not going to speculate on that because that's very dangerous. But essentially, it's hard for a market to really stabilize when there's a lot of uncertainty. And when there's a backlog of cards at PSA and no one really knows what's in that backlog, there's going to be added uncertainty that make this a little bit harder to navigate. So that's why I made the spreadsheet. I am tracking a good amount of players, but not a ton, and I'm going to be working on building out that catalog and basically taking a day out of every month to just go on through, see how it's all going, and then from there, it makes it easier for me and you guys to be able to make decisions. So I'm going to go ahead, go on over there, and we'll sort of dig on into what I'm seeing. Heading on over to the document now, we have the breakdown of populations from January, comparing it to February, and then there's a monthly percentage change. If the box is empty, that's just because there are no pops or no way to really calculate it out. Green is good, that means there's very little change. Red is bad, that means there's a lot of change. Keep in mind, this is a percentage-based thing, not a total added to the pop type of thing. So there will be instances where, sure, it might look like a bad percentage, but maybe you're only adding one card to what was a population of 10, and that looks like a big jump up, but it's really not. But let's go ahead, get on into it. I don't have a lot of vintage because personally, I'm not someone that has a family that was really into soccer. I'm from America, so soccer isn't this lineage-based thing that was handed down to me, and I have, a dad that's told me stories or a grandpa that's told me stories. I don't have that experience. So for me, soccer is all I've been able to pick up as I've gone back in time and just watched tons and tons of videos and read tons of things and listened to tons of podcasts and all that jazz. That's how I know about soccer. So for me, it doesn't really translate too much into vintage. I know a lot of people love vintage, but realistically, you don't really need to calculate the population too much in there unless you're buying into it, because, the populations aren't going to soar in vintage. But essentially, we have the percentage change, which is going to be a good indicator for us. So the bridge between vintage and modern would, in my opinion, be Maradona. Looking at his population, essentially, we can see there's a little bit of an uptick. If you really look here, there's not too many getting graded. In his 1978 crack card, there has been 4 added population to the PSA 5 through 7, and there has been 3 added to the population 2 through 4. So as you can see over here, that's why we kind of have that red there. The Calciatore actually has had a decent amount of pop in terms of the 5 through 7s that are being added, while the 2 through 4s haven't really been up there. That would be an indicator that there's a lot of 2 to 4 ranges that are still out there to be graded, while the 5s and 7s are still getting graded pretty heavily. So pay attention, because these populations I do have to change sort of as we go to make sure that it fits the metrics of whoever I'm talking about. For example, if we're going down all the way to the bottom, right here with Haaland, I only have 10s and 9s, while up there with Maradona, as you can see, I had 2 through 10s, so I sort of have to change it a little bit. So that's a good example of getting close to vintage there with Maradona. Kind of going through the 80s, I'm not too big into any of this. If you want to pause and give it a peek as we sort of go on down, feel free. Personally, I'm not going to dig into any of this too much because they're relatively niche players. One thing I will say is if there's any players in here that I don't have tracked that you would like me to track, feel free to let me know. I'm obviously missing a ton of players. I have a rookie card catalog over here that I am sort of trying to figure out. Green is the players that I want to collect. Red's the ones I don't really care too much about. I have it all sort of mapped out. I'm going to make this better and better. And so if there are any players that you feel like I'm missing in this population breakdown that I really should be tracking, let me know. There might be some players that I just don't feel like tracking, and that's okay too. But I would like to do as much as I can so that I can sort of keep up with all of this. So As we get into the 90s, I feel like this is more appropriate for what my audience would be looking towards. So we'll look at Zidane right there with his Panini Foot 91, 92. Overall, PSA 8 to 10, there haven't been any added. PSA 5 to 7, it's gone up 2. And then PSA 2 to 4, it has also gone up 2. So there's been 4 added to the population in total, which isn't really anything too crazy, and they've all been low grades. We have the original Ronaldo here. I have his football along with his Deportivo and his promo. There's also a newer rookie from 94 that I don't have tracked, but realistically there's barely any in the PSA Pops, so it doesn't really need to be tracked at the moment. But if you look at the population there, essentially where we're seeing the biggest kick up is in the 3 to 5 population area, which makes a lot of sense. PSA 9 to 10s, there's only been 1 added for the footballs, and beyond that, it's not really too crazy. This is kind of higher than a lot of other things in terms of percentage base, but again, when you're talking about a player with this sort of legacy, it really doesn't matter that the population on some of his rookie stickers have gone up 3, 4, maybe 5 in certain grade categories. I will say the 78 right here has gone up a good bit. It went from PSA number of 41 to 54 in that range. So you're sort of seeing, at least with the 80s and 90s, that there's a lot of cards that still can get graded in the 3 to 5 range, while a lot of the 9 and 10s are basically off limits. In the 6 to 8s, there can be stragglers that sort of still come on in. We have Beckham right here, where if you look at his population increases, really nothing too crazy. His Merlin sticker in PSA 8 has gone from 33 to 35, and his 6 to 7s have gone from 29 to 31. Again, the way that I would look at this is, you know, the lower cards are still going to have more pop. It doesn't make any sense as to why there would be more PSA 8s than PSA 6 to 7s combined. That's sort of a result of PSA not having a lower grading service available, at least in recent months, almost a recent year at this point. So, you know, these lower pops are going to catch up, and that'll be fun to track over time. But as you can see here, in terms of his PSA 10s, the Hasbro one has gone up 2, and that's sort of a high pop card. It's also white, a lot easier to grade. Sorry, this is PSA 9s and 10s, but there's, you know, only 2 that have been added in that regard too. Beyond that, again, you can sort of stop as you go and whatever you see fit. We have Thierry Henry right here, who's gone from, in his PSA 8 to 9, his Panini Foot. I'm also keeping track of the Europas as well. His Foot's gone up 3 population in PSA 8 to 10s, while his Europas has gone up from just, I guess, 1 pop, really, while the Russian version hasn't even moved. There have been none of the Russian version graded in the last month, while his regular version has actually gone up from 17 to 20. Sort of interesting, I guess, with the Henry, because the highest percentage change in population really has, I mean, I guess numerically it's been just as many PSA 8 to 10s of his Panini Foot graded as anything else, which I found pretty interesting. I guess that'd be an indicator that there's still a lot of Henrys out there, I would imagine. Or maybe there was just sort of this segment of really high grade ones that came on in. Be interesting to see how that goes going forward. We have the Eto Monday Chromo, barely any sort of straggling on in there. We have the Xavi market, where he has had, I mean, I guess it's a little difficult. There's a 200% increase on the Panini Liga, but really that went from 1 to 3, so it's not all that crazy. His Panini Football went from 9 to, I mean, really, again, there's not much of an increase going on here. The Monday Chromos barely even moved. The Este sticker didn't move at all. So just sort of something to see there. That's not to say that these cards are non-existent. That certainly isn't the case, but, you know, in high grade coming back from PSA, they're not really there, is the point. So I guess for the 2000s, it would be most appropriate to look at Ronaldo and Messi, because that's what the people want. So we have Ronaldo right here, sort of at the bottom of the screen. I'm keeping track of his PSA 5s through PSA 10s. So if we look over here at the percent changes, essentially the PSA 9 pops. Oh, I didn't change the titles for this, but I will now. There we go. Okay, the PSA 7 to 8 pops have gone from about a 5% increase. You can see it went from 41 on his Mega Cracks to 43, while his sticker went from 66 to 69. So that's not really anything too crazy. Again, in the last month, none of the 9s or 10s have been graded. And in a PSA 5 or 6 form, we've seen a few graded in each one as well, but really not too much of an increase. Again, you know, The most significant increase being in the PSA 5 to 6 category, and I would imagine that will stay the same going forward. Over time, there's going to be lower and lower grades that get submitted, and that's just sort of the way it is. But again, really not much that has changed in terms of population in the last month, so that's nice to see. Scrolling on down here, I think Iniesta is a good one to look at because he's sort of a more modern La Liga player. Still pre-modern, but you know, getting a little bit more to the newer age. In PSA 9, went from 64 to 66 for the Monday Chromo. There's also PSA 10 that popped. From PSA 7s and 8s, though, I found this pretty interesting. Went from 45 to 70. So maybe someone just had a ton of them that they sent on in. So that has seen a very substantial increase. And then for the Superliga, sort of the Grail Iniesta rookie, that went from 2 in PSA 9 to 5 in PSA 9, and the PSA 7s or 8s went from 4 to 7, so a pretty significant increase there as well, relative to what there was before, so that would indicate there's still more out there, and from what I've seen on, you know, Spanish sites, it does seem to be that way. Maybe not high grade, but there will still be some out there if you need them. And then the most important, in my opinion, to look at to sort of understand the pre-modern market is Messi. So he has a ton of rookies, and this is why it's sort of important. Down here, I've broken down most of them. I haven't numbered them right, so I'll do that now. So he has 11 rookies if you count both versions of the Mega Cracks team set, the Spanish version and the Catalan version. The Catalan version is the Campeón, and that one is much more rare because it was only released in a small segment of Spain compared to the regular Mega Cracks that was released in Spain and Mexico, and I believe there might be another release section, but essentially it had a much wider base of people buying it, and there was also a lot more sealed stuff because of that. So when we look at this, I guess we can go on over to the PSA 10 pop. Look at this column right here. Essentially, there's been barely any PSA 10s added, and the only PSA 10s that have been added have been the white version of the Mega Cracks, the one with the little autograph, or, you know, facsimile autograph on it. And that went from 161 to 160 to 161, so it only bumped 1, and the same with the Campeón, it only bumped 1 as well. So there's been 2 PSA 10 Messis graded in the last month, and both of them were the most common PSA 10 of Messi's rookies. So that's not really anything too wild there. Basically seems to be locked down. Looking at the PSA 9s here, now you can see that, again, there haven't been a ton added in terms of, I mean, like right here, there's a stretch of 4 cards that weren't even added any in 9s, and those are the blue and the green version of the team set Mega Cracks, both Campeón and Campeones. So again, with the PSA 9s, I guess if we look right here, the one that has changed the most, and this is where doing percentage base kind of screws me, the only thing that was added there was one Mundi Chromo foil from 13 to 14 in the pop, and that's the highest percent. So realistically, there's not a lot of these being graded. The regular Mundi Chromo, sort of Messi and someone else, I don't even know who the other person is, to be honest, but it's a sticker with 2 guys on it. It's not even a sticker, I lied there, but it's a card with 2 people on it, and then there's 2 people on the back as well. And so with that, I mean, there's only been 1 of each of them added. If we look at the PSA 9s for the Mundi Chromo, it went from 204 to 205. Again, not really a substantial, I mean, that's 1 card, obviously. And just continuing that throughout, I mean, with the white version of the Mega Cracks, it went from 181 to 184, and the Campeón went from 67 to 68. So again, I mean, in PSA 9s, we've barely added any cards. I just quick math right there, I think we've added 7 or 8 PSA 9s in the last month for Messi in total, which is, I mean, that's very little. Keep in mind, Messi cards did boom last January, February-ish. And right now, I think PSA is caught up into about January, February. So they might start hitting this next stretch where we're going to see more Messis coming back. But that's good. I think it shows that there's an opportunity there that won't be there for too long. So looking at the PSA 8s, we'll see here, again, there's been no PSA 8s of the Mundi Chromo with Messi and another player on it. There haven't been any of those added. So essentially for the Mundi Chromo with Messi and the second player on the card, there have only been 2 cards even graded in a PSA 8 to 10 range in the last month, which is pretty wild. If we look at the real Mega Cracks, the true rookie for Messi, I guess you could say, in total, there has been 1 PSA 9 added to the pop, and there have been 2 PSA 8s, which isn't anything wild either, especially considering the price range for that card. You would think if anyone had them, they'd be sending them in, and they'd be sending them in quick as well. So it doesn't seem like too many of those are coming in. And I mean, just looking at the PSA 8 percentage increase, I mean, it's between 0 and 4% for a lot of these. So realistically, you're not seeing much of an increase at all. I think the biggest increase that I'm seeing here, just from kind of skimming it, is the white Mega Cracks version that went from 163 to 168. So the highest increase of any Messi card in a certain grade is 5. And that's the most commonly graded Messi card outside of his Mundi Chromo. His Mundi Chromo only went up 4 in PSA 8. So I think that this is sort of the key indicator for me that the market is sort of stabilizing in terms of PSA getting back a lot of different cards and just a lot of what people have to grade. Now again, as I mentioned before, and I'm gonna head on out of here. I mean, I guess we can look at Mbappe and Haaland. This is a long video, so we'll just keep it going. One thing I did we'll look beyond that. One thing I did find somewhat interesting too was Lewandowski. His action shot has been pretty heavily graded, I would say, in a lower pop. It went up 19% from 36 to 43 in a PSA 8. Also went up a couple in PSA 10 and PSA 9. So if you want a Lewandowski, that shows that they're still sort of flowing in, but Lewandowski only has 2 real selections for his rookie. So you really, I mean, you're not going to have a ton of choices to really go outside of that. But again, I think that that's a good indicator that the market's pretty healthy right now in terms of getting cards back graded. And then looking at the more ultra-modern segment, I only have Mbappe and Haaland. If you guys want anything else graded, or I guess tracked, feel free to let me know again down below. I will also be making a list for USMNT players, but it's kind of hard with cheaper cards because PSA doesn't have a bulk service, or they don't have a way to get cheap cards back fast. So it's a lot harder to really nail down that. I think what I'm tracking right now is a real good example of what the med to high-end soccer looks like, because that's what's really going to be getting graded during this time where PSA is a little bit expensive. But looking down at the bottom, we have Haaland and Mbappe. So we'll start with Mbappe. His Panini Foot, his true rookie sticker, has gone up 1 in a PSA 10 and has gone up 6 in a PSA 9 over the last month. So nothing too wild there. If you look at the percent increases over here, the highest percent increases are coming in the 2017 Topps Chrome Refractor and the 2017 Select Unlimited Potential. There's not too many of them, only pop 138, 185 respectively. But, I mean, percentage-wise, that's where we're seeing the biggest pop in terms of the overall population. And then down to Haaland on the bottom here. I mean, this is where you can really see sort of the ramp up in production. I mean, I don't even know what the highest thing we've seen before this was in terms of a graded singular category. I guess the Panini Foot PSA 9 at 500 almost. But all of these Haaland rookies are 500 and above, essentially. There are a few that are below that, but you get the idea. There's a lot more Haaland rookies than there are almost anything else I've talked about today. And so with that, just be careful. Looking at the percent increases, you can also see here that this is an example of Haaland still has a lot of supply coming back. I mean, Haaland only popped off in the last year or two, while Mbappe's been a known commodity for a little bit longer, so it makes sense. There's also more out there to be graded. And so with Haaland, you can see that the highest percent increase happened in the foosball. The PSA 10 pop went from 314 to 359, and I think this is a contributing factor as to why Haaland's foosball prices have been so low. I've seen people on Twitter sort of talking about how this was a really, really expensive card at one point. I think its high was like 6K maybe, and I think now it's 1.5. I could be wrong. It might have been higher than 6K. Whatever it is, the drop-off's been about an 80% dip in his price, and I think that this is why. I mean, whenever you have 45 people getting a card back in a small amount of time, they're going to want to mostly sell, and they'll just undercut each other until we hit a bottom. And so I think that's what you're seeing there, since that's the highest percent increase. Also, as far as PSA 9s go, there's been 828 of those graded, while compared to Finest, Topps, Chrome, and Sapphire, there's a lot less. One of the things I did find pretty surprising here, I guess, is that the Sapphire really, I mean, kind of in line with the other pops for the Topps, Chrome, and the Finest. So I don't think it's anything that's all too rare comparatively. I know people put a premium on Sapphire, but I don't really see it. Personally, my preferred Haalands would be the Finest and the foosball, because, I mean, Salzburg kit, that's really all I can say. I think that it's important to have the earliest kit you can that's still a professional release, of course. So that's really it. That's really what I got for you guys. Just wanted to go through and sort of show where the market's at in terms of getting population back to the people. And so for me personally, that gives me some more security that I think that the PSA returns are going to slow down a good bit, and we're not going to be seeing people undercutting as much going forward. Now, you know, you never know what's going to go on going forward, but having these numbers and being able to see these stats definitely helps me to be able to make some decisions, and hopefully you guys get some value out of it as well. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. Again, anything you want to tell me, anything that you thought that you got out of this that you found pretty substantial, let me know in a comment down below, and any players you'd like me to track or keep an eye on, would love to hear it too. Not going to promise that I will, but I'll at least consider it, and there are a lot of players I'd like to add, so there's a good chance I will. But with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.